We're going to turn our attention to the banking industry here in Switzerland, and I'm joined by Dominique Roten from Alternative Bank, and he's going to give exactly that, an alternative point of view. So thank you for joining me in the studio, Dominique.
Thank you.
Let's start by establishing the size of your bank. You've got more than 25,000 clients, and also you have a balance sheet running into the hundreds of millions, so you're a considerable size bank. But if I was to open a bank account, surely I would open it with the likes of UBS or Credit Suisse, an established name. Surely my money's safer there.
Well, that's a big question. If we look at a couple of years behind, where is it safer, in UBS or at our bank, ABS? I think the reason why people choose to come to our bank is that they maybe some way are, let's say, fed up with what happens in the usual financial sector, which has also brought to the financial crisis, and they are looking for something different, something which is more based on values, and that is what the Alternative Bank can offer. We have a business model which is based on values, ethical values, which means different kind of things which I can explain more deeply. We have, for instance, as a first criteria, ethical criteria, that our aim is not to make the maximum of profit. We do make profit, but we don't try to make the maximum of profit. That also means that we don't have kind of products which could possibly make maximum profit. We are basically a loan and savings bank. That means that we have a panoply of accounts where money comes in, and with this we give out loans to the what we call the real economy. It helps, for instance, enterprises which have a focus on social or environmental issues to realize them through our credit. If we look back at 1990, when we were created, that was a big issue, because there was all this argument going on about what happens to the money which goes into the ordinary bank system. And there was a lack of transparency at that time. There still is a lack of transparency, and we wanted to be a different model, and the concrete action was to prove that we can do banking affairs by using or playing transparency.
These sound very nice principles, but we should also get some perspective to these ideas, because, for example, your bank employs around 80 people, I think. Credit Suisse, on the other hand, it employs more than 50,000 in its different parts of its bank. So how do you apply your ideas to a bank of the size of Credit Suisse?
Well, of course, there's a big gap in the size of these two banks. Well, ideally, once we are big enough that everybody else does the same like us, then we have the realize, in a sense, the utopia which is behind the bank alternative. But be realistic, that's going to take some time, I guess. But what maybe I can add to this is that we're just not the one alternative bank. There is a network around the world of alternative banks, or ethical banks, maybe the better word. There's one in Europe, there's a federation in Europe, which we are part of, and in almost every European countries you have now one or more ethical banks which have or apply pretty much the same ethical criteria than us. And there is also a global, it's called Global Alliance for Social Banking. That's a worldwide network of ethical banks which we are part of too. So the ideas which we propose since more than 20 years grows and gets more known, and also more known by, I would say, a general public.
Do you think people really care, though? I mean, people will complain to their friends and they're probably unhappy with bailouts of banks, but do people actually care if it doesn't affect their bank account directly? So, and I suppose the real test would be that to know how many more customers you've had since the 2008 banking crisis, because in theory, if people care about ethical banking, you should be seeing a lot more customers.
We actually had precisely much more customers since 2008, we had a very high increase of customers already before. I mean, our balance sheet raised before that between 5 and 8% per year, and after that, especially 2009, we had. I'm responsible of the French part of our bank. At the French part, we noticed 4 times more new customers coming than before. So that's one side, or one sign of to answer your question. But it's also, of course, a struggle to find out the right rhythm of croissance, of raising, because I mean, it's one thing to get money in from new customers, it's another thing to give it out into loans. You have to find out the loans. That's not too much the problem, but the time you need to open an account is a bit shorter than the time you need to make analyze and visit and everything which goes around the credit. So it's to find out the right equilibrium between getting new customers and having a croissance and managing the croissance. Okay. But we do, I would say, pretty well so far.
Just to finish off, how would you evaluate the state of the banking sector in Switzerland? Do you think lessons have been learned from the post-Lehman Brothers crisis, and what would you like to see changed?
Well, some lessons have learned, but I would say that have been more or less imposed by external events. All this question about tax or not taxed money that has changed in the recent years, but to my perception, a lot through the pressure from outside. There is this discussion going on about the amount of ratio of fonds propres, capital.
Yeah, Tier 1. Mm-hmm.
There are different views or interpretation of what it should be or what it should be not. So it's a lot of discussions going around that, and I think there could be a bit more quickly the discussion and the results of the discussion.
Yeah, the tax issue is interesting. Do you think this is ultimately a positive thing, that countries like France, Germany and the US are putting more pressure on their citizens to pay tax if they have money in Swiss accounts?
I would say the basic question behind that is what makes a democracy be able to function, and that is a working system of tax administration, for instance, and that means that all people also understand that our system works. The government, the local government, the state government can only work if the tax are paid normally. It's not the question to me. Maybe we should have anticipated what happens now, because now we are in a way running after a solution which has not been anticipated, because the solution we run after is because of the pressure of other people and other states. And we know since 1990 that there is a disequilibrium. We know that a lot of people or organization or even states put money into Switzerland because of this aspect of the not declared money, and that is the problem which is behind it has not been really anticipated.
Well, thank you for joining me, Dominique. Dominique giving you a point of view there which you're unlikely to hear from many working in the Swiss banking industry. That's all for the moment. Goodbye for now.